And there's another example of that, and that comes via Mr. Dave Carroll. Dave, welcome to Istanbul. Great to have you here, and really looking forward to your presentation. All yours.
United breaks guitars. When we landed in Nebraska, I confirmed what I'd suspected. Mike Taylor had been the victim of a vicious act of malice at O'Hare. And so began a year-long saga of pass the buck, don't ask me, and I'm sorry, sir, your claim can go nowhere. So do all the airlines people from New York to New Delhi, including kind Miss Earlwig, who says the final word from her is no. I've heard all your excuses, and I've chased your wild gooses, and this attitude of yours, I say, must go. Here we go. United, united, you broke my Taylor guitar. United, united, some big help you are. You broke it, you should fix it. You're liable, just admit it. I should have flown with someone else or gone by car. 'Cause United breaks guitars. Yeah, United breaks guitars. One more. 'Cause United breaks guitars. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. Could I get a show of hands of who here in the audience has had a bad airline experience or knows somebody who has? That's great. In the last few years, I've had the opportunity to tell this story all over the world, and I get the same answer everywhere. And that is, we have something in common. And that relatability has fueled one of the most successful customer service complaints in history. There we go. If you have a video that does something outstanding in a given month on YouTube, they award it what they call honors. And in July of 2009, when I put my video up on YouTube, it had a lot of honors. It was the #1 most watched music video in the world for the month of July. More interesting than that, though, it was the #6 most watched video of any kind in the world for the month of July. So it had become more than just a music story, it had become a social statement too. And since then, Very cool things have happened. Harvard has done a case study on it. They do it every year. Children in primary school in grade 1 have followed me for the power of one person to make a change with not a lot of money. Over 400 books have been written, including being mentioned in David Meerman Scott's book, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of conversation that has happened around this over the last 4 years. And it's changed my life instantly and forever, but it also had impacts in other areas. And when this video came out, the media always positioned it in a very short story, maybe 90 seconds or 2.5 minutes. And they would say, this is a classic story of David and Goliath, the two sides coming together in a confrontation, where the small guy takes on the big guy and the small guy wins for a change. And I like to think that my story is a lot more involved than that. I like to think that my story is really one about building a brand rather than bashing a brand. And it's a story of non-confrontation rather than confrontation. Because in my case, I had $150 to make this video. That was my budget for United Breaks Guitars, the first song. And I managed to reach 150 million people or more in the number of impressions with that video. And a lot of other companies have seen this as a beacon of what can be in the age of social media. It can be an opportunity rather than a cautionary tale of why you should fear your customer. So hopefully by the end of my presentation, you'll buy into what I believe is the bigger story. It's brand building, not brand bashing. My story starts on March 31st in 2008. I've been in a band with my brother Don called Sons of Maxwell for most of my adult life, and it's named after our dad Max. And we in our band had an opportunity to go to Nebraska for a one-week trip back in March 31st, 2008. And we boarded, ironically, for the first time, United Airlines. I'd never flown with them before, but we got on the plane, and we got off in Chicago to deplane and catch our connector plane to go to Omaha. And while we were sitting there, across from me was our bass player, Mike Hiltz, and behind him was a woman we didn't know, but she looked out the window and said, "Oh my God, they're throwing guitars outside." So we were alarmed by this, and I tried to get people to help me, the flight attendant, another woman in the gangway, and another woman making a phone call at O'Hare Airport. And I interrupted her and I said, "Excuse me, our guitars are being thrown on the tarmac." And each one of these ladies said, "Don't talk to me," or "I can't help you," or they didn't want to help. So it wasn't bad enough that my guitar was being thrown around an international airport tarmac. I'd just been rejected by 3 women in 5 minutes. That was the bigger story. And it occurred to me, though, that there was a problem with the company. I didn't know my guitar was badly damaged at that point, but it turned out that it was. And my $3,500 guitar, very much like this one, was really badly damaged, and United didn't want to take any responsibility. After 9 months of me trying, I was calling India, I was calling Chicago and New York and doing everything I was supposed to do, still nothing. And eventually they said, "Mr. Carroll, you didn't open a claim within 24 hours, so our policy is we're not responsible for the damage to your guitar." They left me with 2 options. The options were to do nothing and walk away or do something else. And so I decided to do something else. And I told the customer service rep that I was a musician. And I made a promise that day. When they said they would do nothing, my promise was I was going to do 3 music videos. I was going to write 3 songs, make 3 music videos. I was going to post them to YouTube. And my goal was to get 1 million hits in 1 year with all 3 videos combined. And I left it at that. In January, I started with the very first song. I wrote that first song. I presented it to my friends in the music business who donated their time, so they helped me make a really good sounding record. I sent it to my friends in the film business. They donated a day. They said, "We will help you." So at the time, I'd been a volunteer firefighter for 5 years in Waverly, Nova Scotia. So I went to the Station 41, the fire station near my home, and we shot the video in just 8 hours, and we had a great day. And I posted the video on Monday, July 6th, 2009, at 11:30 p.m. I went to bed 30 minutes later, and I had 6 hits. And I thought all 6 were my hits, because I was going to watch it 1 million times if I needed to. But fortunately, I didn't have to, because the next morning, I was excited. I got up, and there were 300 hits on Tuesday morning. There were 5,000 hits by lunch, and there were 25,000 hits by dinner time. And that night I did an interview with the LA Times, which turned into the next day of being a full-on media frenzy. I woke up on Wednesday morning of that week at 6 a.m. for a radio interview, and then from then on for quite a while. It was interviews all day with every type of media you can imagine. It was amazing. I was doing phone calls, print interviews, television interviews. I would do them all day until 11 o'clock at night. Then I would go to bed for 2 hours, and I would wake up and I would do the European morning circuit, BBC and stations in Germany. And so it was a really intense couple of weeks. And it was interesting that depending on who I talked to, they were more or less interested in the story. My friends in the music business loved that I was in Rolling Stone. I thought it was great when I was on CNN, the Situation Room, because Wolf Blitzer in North America was declaring this as a situation. It wasn't just a story anymore, it was big. And 6 months after, my parents have been very supportive of my brother and I for our entire life. They were proud every time we did an important interview, but it wasn't for 6 months later, after 200 interviews or so, that my mother finally got excited. I got a call to be on a show called The View, a popular daytime television talk show in the United States, with Whoopi Goldberg, the actress. And that's my mother's favorite show. So I called my mother one day and I said, "Mom, I got big news. I'm going to be on The View next week." And she's never at a loss for words, and she likes talking on the phone, but there was this dead silence. And then, holy fuck. This turned my mother into a potty mouth. And my dad followed suit. He wasn't impressed by that, but he was really impressed when Reader's Digest called for an interview because he said that would really help my CD sales. And it occurred to me fairly quickly that my life was changing, but I started to see things happening outside of myself, implications in other ways. And the first one, I guess, was in the music industry, because I finally realized, as an independent musician for all those years, that I was now able to access a mass audience directly. And musicians up until then, up until the use of social media, had to rely on the big companies who would own you and own your music, and you'd have to go through the right manager and the right agent and everything else, and now you didn't have to do that. And I managed to reach 150 million people, not just with my song, but with my story. And your story is exponentially more powerful than anything you could ever do. Your story is what will sell you. It's not your list of features. It's not what your product can do. It's why you do it, what motivates you to do what you do, and how you got there. That's what people want to know. And if you can share your story effectively and people will buy into that, they will buy whatever you have. And I had an email from someone that proved that to me. I got an email one day from someone who said, "Mr. Carroll, I hate country music." And I thought, this isn't a very optimistic start to an email. And he said, "But I love the way you handled this. I like the integrity in which you're handling this United Brace Guitars business, so I'm going to buy everything you've got on your website." Sight unseen. He didn't listen to any of the music, but he bought it all. He bought the t-shirts and everything else. So he ended up buying $300 worth of things because he bought my story. If he had been shopping for what I did, he hated country music. I would have lost 99 cents, but because he bought what I was doing, instead of what I did, I made 300 times more than what I would have lost. That's the importance of storytelling. Social media is the next area that I saw a big difference in. And with social media, it became clear to me that my story was a good example that, as one example anyways, that social media answers the question, is it relevant to your business? And I think it absolutely is. Because, of course, social media is about embracing. It's about engaging. It's not about just putting up a Facebook page and saying, "I'm doing social media." It's a two-way street, and you have to do it. And companies today are often still not doing enough. They don't know what to do, or they're fearful of it, and it doesn't need to be that way. And in the early days, I wanted to make a difference with this platform that I'd been given. I received 10,000 email in the first few weeks from people saying, "I love what you're doing," and then they would tell me a story, and it would often end with, "I wish I could sing or I could do something else because I don't have a voice. No one will ever hear me." And I wanted to help them. And I also have met many companies that want to get involved, but they don't know what to do. And so, as trying to make a difference, my partners and I have created some companies. We created 2 of them, in fact, that I'll tell you about. The first one is called Grapevine. Can you advance that for me? The first one is called Grapevine. And Grapevine is an opportunity for consumers to amplify their voice. They can go to our site, say what happened, and we take their gripe and we amplify it. We give it some voice, and it allows them to express their sentiment. Other companies, on the other hand, want to find out what that sentiment is. They need to know what people are saying, but they're not sure how. Well, Lean-To Logics is another company that will do that. And Lean-To Logics allows companies to capture that sentiment and make useful use of it. So it's a two-way street. The resolution is where we need to go. It's not about brand bashing. It's not about intimidation. It's about bringing 2 sides together, and that's what we're trying to accomplish with these companies. Customer experience is another area where this was important, and I've met a lot of companies. It's sad to say, I've met a lot of companies that embrace this idea of what I call statistical insignificance. And statistical insignificance is a culture that companies have where they believe that getting it mostly right most of the time is the gold standard for customer service. They think that it's okay to marginalize some of your customer base and say, congratulations everybody, we got 97% of our customers liking us. Only 3% hate us. And you can't do that anymore. It was never okay, and now it could be death to your brand because one customer can make a huge difference. So if you're a company that embraces statistical insignificance because you get it mostly right most of the time, you're in danger of becoming irrelevant tomorrow because if you don't change, your competition will be, and you will become irrelevant by that alone. Branding is another area that was impacted by United Brakes Guitars. And with all the academic study that's gone on about branding, I think I learned everything I need to know about branding from my family, and you have stories as well that can teach you about branding or remind you. The second video, United Brakes Guitar Song 2, is my favorite for a lot of reasons. And one of them is that there were more people involved. My 88-year-old grandmother was in this video. My son, there was my dad, friends, people I didn't know. There was just a lot more people involved. And there's a great blooper at the end of that video where my grandmother, I'm escorting her off a field because she didn't know she was supposed to go, and she was very animated. And 2 weeks after the video came out, it was busy, not like the first one, but the phone was ringing a lot. And I took a call one day from someone who said, it's someone from the film industry in Halifax, and we're shooting a feature film with Oscar winner Olympia Dukakis, and we're looking for actors. So I pulled the car over. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm going to be in an Olympia Dukakis movie. And she says, we want to know if your grandmother's available, because they liked her work in the second video. So my grandmother was in a motion picture. She made $160 in 4 hours to be a sleeping lady in bed too, and she donated it to charity, and then she said, I'm retiring from acting, David. I like to keep a low profile. But not long after that, though, my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And they said she would live 9 months, and she lived a year. She exceeded what she lived. And I miss my grandmother terribly. She was a fantastic person, but I learned so many things from her, but I think what I learned most from my grandmother was how to die with dignity, because she died with tremendous dignity. She never complained about her fate or took medication, and she accepted everything. And she didn't want to die in a hospital, though, and she didn't have to, because she passed away at home in my parents' home where she was living in bed one morning, and it wasn't just any bed, but it was a wrought iron bed that reminded her of being a little girl back in England. And the reason I say that's important here today is because you might think, as a musician, having the #1 music video in the world would be the high point of my story. It would be the best thing that could ever happen to me. And it's not even close to the best thing. The one thing that I take away from my story above all others is that I have a platform that rests upon the stories of other people. Everything that's good that's happened to me since the release of this video happened because my grandmother's got a role in a movie. All the people who took the time and had fun the day shooting the video or playing in the band, or maybe some of the people here who enjoyed the video enough to take the time to watch it and show it to a friend. I'm not here today because I did something amazing. I'm here because something amazing happened to me that everybody contributed to. And that's what having a brand today means. Your brand is nothing more than the sum of the conversations being had about it, but it also rests upon the stories of all these people that if you embrace and open yourself to them, that your brand can be lifted. The old days of holding on to everything and owning the message and the conversation, those are gone, and I think it's a good thing because if you include other people, amazing things can happen to you. And to get to that point, all you have to do is change your perception. You can become a more caring company, you can become a more involved person, you can share more by just changing your perception on how you see things, because we're connected. All of us are connected with one another, and if you can realize that at a deeper level, if you believe that all of us have a fundamental connection with one another, you can experience that if you choose to. And so all you have to do is change your perspective. And a good example that I'll close with on perspective is a true story that happened last January. I've got, my wife and I have 2 boys. They're 4 and 1, Flynn and Fisher. Flynn's the older one. And we went to Magic Kingdom at Disney World last January for a family trip. And we were having a good time. We were at Magic Kingdom one evening. It was getting dark, and we were going home for the night. And just as we were getting ready to leave, my son saw the Star Wars simulation ride. So he saw it, and he says, Dad, we got to go on this thing. So we walked up to the simulation ride, and there's a sign there. And it warns you. It says, if you get motion sick or you have a bad back, this ride probably isn't for you. And so I was hoping that he wouldn't make the height restriction, because I do get motion sickness on those type of rides. But he was tall enough, so we were going to go on that ride. So we walk on the ride. Almost we're walking in like slow motion, like we're heroes in the making, going on this dangerous ride. And we're saying goodbye to the women we love. In this case, it's the same woman, my wife and his mother. And we walk on the ride, and the Star Wars simulation ride is a pod that has about 15 chairs in it. And we sat right in the front. It's a 3D ride, so they give you the glasses. And we sit down and we buckle ourselves in, and instantly we're doing battle in space. We're being thrown around, we're being attacked, we're attacking, and I'm getting motion sick. My neck's getting sweaty. I just want off it. I'm having a horrible time. And I look at Flynn, my son, and he's being thrown around the chair, and I determine that this is every man for himself until this ride is over. And eventually the ride ends about 2 minutes later, and I don't feel good at all. And I said, Flynn, how are you doing? And, I'm not feeling good. And he looks up to me with these 3D glasses on, and he says, I pooped. And then he says, but just a little. And that's the difference between someone who's 44 and someone who's almost 4. Because the 4-year-old will always see a qualitative and a quantitative difference between pooping in your pants a little or a whole lot. And so we got off the ride, and my wife couldn't believe it, because I just 5 minutes before got on this ride, and now it looked like I'd been in jail for the night. I was walking out, I looked horrible, and Flynn, my son, had the walk of someone who had pooped his pants. So he's walking like this. And my wife says, Flynn, what happened? Did you poop your pants? And he says, yes, Mommy, but we were in space. We had the same ride, 2 different experiences, because our perspectives were completely different. I'm never going on that again, and he can't wait to go back again. And so the lesson, though, that I'll leave you with is when you're designing anything and you're getting involved in social media or just planning a project of any size, you have to care about it enough, you have to get involved, and your perspective matters, because when shit happens, because it always will happen, are your pants going to be half full or half empty? I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.